James Barfield here with the Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never, ever duplicated. Okay? Now, I want to talk to you about a couple of topics on this show, and they're both topics that we've talked about and discussed before. Now, my first topic is the firing of Wichita State basketball coach Issac Brown. Some of you have expressed a surprise, a displeasure with this change of basketball coaches. And those of you that did not see this coming have not paid much attention to the basketball culture at Wichita State University for the last several years. Now, let me be clear. In December, I gave a fair warning to anybody that would watch the video that I produced on that show. I talked about the fact that Issac Brown was on a short leash at that time because of what was happening at Wichita State basketball games. And when I say that, I mean losing games that they should have won, having 2,000 to 3,000 empty seats at each ball game, and basically being a mediocre Division I basketball team. And I said at that time, that combination does not play well at Koch Arena. Not for Wichita State. It does not, and it has not for several years. Now, I also told you at the time, in December, that one of the reasons that I was giving you all a warning, giving Coach Brown a warning, that he would have to make some changes immediately in order to hold and keep his job. And the reason I said that was because, as I said in that video, the new athletic director at Wichita State was not the guy that hired Brown and put him in that position as head coach. That guy had a history with Brown being the backup coach to Greg Marshall, and then had the confidence to place him in the head coaching job. Now, that athletic director himself was fired. Okay? And the new athletic director had no and felt no loyalty to keep Brown in that position. And I'm sure, absolutely sure, that this guy was getting plenty of heat from the basketball fans, from the basketball boosters, the say-so members, okay, to do something, and do something quickly, because they could see the handwriting on the wall. And I want to tell you, the only way that Issac Brown, the only chance he had to get at least another year in that position was he would have had to be able to take this current crop to the NCAA this year. And he was unable to do it. So his fate was sealed. And you all should have seen it coming. Go back and watch my video. Go to yoururbanconnection.com, and under the tab Sports, click on that, and you will find the video that I did in September, where I gave fair warning to anybody that would listen that Issac Brown's job was on the line. Okay? Now, everything that I touched on in that video, you will find is what led to Brown's dismissal. There's only two things that I didn't touch on in that video. One of them I knew about, one of them I didn't. Number one was I didn't touch on the portal issue. Players leaving to go where the money's at. I didn't touch on that. And that, let me just say, I'll be the first one to say, that was not under Isaac Brown's control. That is the issue that got the former athletic director fired. That is why we lost so many players from last year's team. That's the one issue. Now, the other one that I didn't talk about was something that I didn't know about. And it's left me baffled and dismayed. Because on last Friday, in a Wichita Eagle article, the current athletic director was quoted as saying he would wait until the end of the basketball season, in other words, until they were eliminated, before he did an evaluation of the team's performance. Now, that was Friday. They played Friday night and they lost. That means the end of their season. The next day, the very next day, Saturday, Isaac Brown was fired. Now, ladies and gentlemen, either the current athletic director was misquoted by a reporter or the newspaper, or he was not telling the truth when he made those remarks. Because he, and I have to believe now, the way things happen, he already had done his evaluation. He already had his mind made up. He knew what he was going to do. Now, that's his choice. Every athletic director likes to have his own team in place, especially when the current team is not living up to expectations. And I told you all what the expectations were in Wichita State. They expect a winning team. They expect for you at the end of the year to have a record, a win-loss record, that would allow you to go into the postseason either with the NCAA, and if not, that's preferred, but if not the NCAA, certainly to an NIT bid. Last year, they did neither. This year, they were not going to do either. Okay? So if Boatwright would still have been the executive director, the athletic director, I'm almost positive that Isaac Brown would have been still in place for another year. But he wasn't. So this new athletic director wanted to have his own man and have his own team in place. Somebody that he had hired, somebody that he had total confidence in. He didn't have that in Isaac Brown. Like I said, he didn't have the work history with Isaac Brown. Boatwright had that. Okay, so there you have it. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. And I'm led to believe that there have already been conversations about this job with former coach Mark Turgeon. I'm of the belief that Mark Turgeon has already exhibited at least some interest in this coaching job and returning to Wichita State. Because without that, I don't see how this athletic director could make that decision in less than 24 hours after they played their last game. So I've heard a lot of names thrown around, but I believe, and I'd almost bet my hat on it, that Mark Turgeon will be the next head basketball coach at Wichita State. Okay, I might be wrong. Now, all of you have opinions, excuse me, and I'm sure a lot of them don't agree with mine, but I'm giving my reasons. And like I said, go back and look in December, look at the video that I did that I put out, telling you all, giving you all a warning. Coach Brown was on thin ice. He was skating on very thin ice because of the culture of basketball that is demanded by the Wichita State Shocker basketball team. And they won't put up. I mean, in Wichita State, it's an unwritten word, but you either win or you leave. It's as simple as that. They're accustomed to it, okay? And hey, that's the life of a Division I college coach in America. It doesn't just happen at Wichita State. You either win or you go. That's where it is, right? Now, I'm going to move on to my second topic. And my second topic is another one that I've talked about. And that is the third-party report upon completion of an investigation into the Wichita Police Department. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about this, and we want to talk about the culture, the police culture at the Wichita Police Department. And it's not good. And I've said in previous videos that it's not good. It has not been good. And it's going to take a lot to change it. Because you've got a lot of old-time police officers there that really don't want to see change. You've got an FOP that has more power and more control than any FOP should have over a police department. And then you've got higher ups, for lack of a better word, they're afraid of the FOP. They're afraid to stand up to the FOP. Now that remains to be seen whether or not that's the case with the new police chief. I don't know, he's not been here long enough. But one of the recommendations from this third-party group was that they redo the contract, that's the city, redo at least certain parts of the contract that they have negotiated with the FOP. Because the FOP has power that they should not have. And how do they get it? Because the city manager and the city council caved and gave in to the whims of the FOP. And that didn't just start this year. That's been going on for years. They found many, many faults within the current police department. Listen, even 35% of the officers that they talked to from the Wichita Police Department, 35% of them said that they have witnessed bias regarding race, regarding sex, regarding gender. They've witnessed it. So for anybody to deny that that kind of bias exists in the Wichita Police Department, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're lying through their teeth. It's as simple as that. Another aspect, they found faults, and I've been telling you all this for the longest, with this racial, the CRB, okay? Look, Citizens Review Board. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been telling you ever since it was first established that this CRB was worthless. And I'm going to sit here today and tell you the same thing. It's worthless. And it'll be worthless tomorrow. Now, why do I say that? Because I sat at Evergreen Park when former Chief Gordon Ramsay and his deputy came to a meeting at Evergreen Park to tell us about the implementation of the Citizens Review Board. Now, I will tell you this. I have advocated for an independent civilian oversight board for years. I promoted that idea to the city manager. I promoted that idea to the former police chief. I promoted that idea to some of the city council people. Now, anybody will tell you that if this board, in its current concept, was worth a grain of salt, the loudest voices in opposition to its being would be the FOP, Fraternal Order Police. But when this board was put into place, there was no opposition from the FOP. Why? Because they didn't see it as a threat to what they were doing. They didn't give in anything. They didn't sacrifice anything. They still maintained absolute control. Now, if you look at what the objective is of the FOP, it only has one objective, and that is to serve and protect its members. In other words, the police officers that are members of the Fraternal Order of Police. That's all it is. They don't care about the taxpayers. They don't care about the citizens. Their only objective is to protect the innocence of their police members. And that's what they've done all along. And they've done it with the concurrence of deputies, city council people, and the city manager. So we have to ask ourselves, are they going to change? Well, I can tell you, I could be wrong, but I don't see it. You see, I've advocated for a citizens review board or an independent civilian oversight board that has subpoena power. See, the board that's currently formatted does not have any subpoena power. They don't have even any authority or power to even investigate any of these claims. Their sole job is to review these cases after they've been through the internal review board, after the cases have already been decided. Okay, well, what good is that? You cannot change anything. They cannot change anything. They can make recommendations that are more often than not ignored. They cannot even advance public information, such as give an officer's name, what does the officer's personnel file look like? Is this the first time he's been charged, he or she has been accused of wrongdoing? See, we know none of that. And once they've been cleared by the internal affairs, they can't change anything. They can't make any recommendations. As a matter of fact, they don't even know all of the information that went on in the investigation of a certain allegation, a certain charge. So they're worthless. And they won't be worth anything until and unless they are an independent oversight board, not a review board, because the review board cannot change a single thing. You're looking after the fact. That's when they come in. After all the decisions have been made, after the officers have been cleared, they can't overturn that. It's not going to happen. I told people, don't get all excited because they're implementing a citizens review board. Because if you do, you're going to be greatly disappointed. And now, after several years, now you have an outside agency to come in and tell the city manager, the city council, the police chief, whoever, that this CRB is not effective. I mean, those are their words. Same thing I've been saying ever since they were formulated. But who's going to listen to me? Okay, so that's just one of the issues, but there are several issues. There are several recommendations that this group, who was paid over $260,000 to conduct this investigation into this group, there are several recommendations that they have made. And they're saying this department basically needs an overhaul because there's several areas of concern. There are several areas where they're lacking. And one of the biggest is organization. They're not even organized. They don't know who's in charge. They want to put together a community police unit, but they're not organized in that. The officers don't know what they're supposed to be doing. You see, this sounds a lot to me. I hate to say it, but this group, this police department, according to this agency, they sound an awful lot like the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. They're unorganized, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't do anything. And yet we're supposed to believe that they're for our benefit. And here we have a police department with over 600 officers, or should have at least when it's fully staffed. And I believe at the present time, there are about 60, 62 officers understaffed. Response times have grown to be outrageous. And yet, nobody knows who's in charge. And so this has been part of the problem. The officers call, and we've heard this a lot in the last 60, 90 days, the elite group of officers who belong to the SWAT unit. These were the officers that was involved in the text messaging scandal that took place. And they're still on the force. They're still on the force. After texting racist, sexist, homophobic messages back and forth to each other, after displaying total disrespect for citizens and civilians, using language such as, we de-escalated who needed to be de-escalated. I mean, what kind of a conversation and what kind of a trust can you have in officers that are carrying on and conducting themselves in this manner, and you keep them on board once you find out about it? You don't fire anybody. You basically don't even punish anybody. You maybe slap them on the wrist and say, now, you know, you gotta be a good boy, you gotta be a good boy. You can't say things like that. At least not in a text message where it can be traced. You see, you say things like that when you guys are sitting down eating donuts and drinking coffee. You say things like that when you guys are together and sitting in your cars and you're talking. You can say things like that when you're at a bar having your drinks or whatever. But we cannot let the public know that you think like that. See, they won't like that. But you keep them on the force. So in essence, you're saying that I agree with you, okay? And that kind of talk is fine as long as it's among yourselves. But we can't utilize that in texting, okay? So something's wrong. So they talk about management conflicts. The report also mentions low confidence in the working relationship between the department and the city manager's office. Just 4% of surveyed officers feel that the organization has a good working relationship with the city manager's office, the report says. 4%. Communication problems between the department, the city manager's office, the law department, and human resources have created an atmosphere of mistrust and lack of coordination. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, that whole culture calls for a complete overhaul of the Wichita PD. I don't think anything less than that's going to work. And these recommendations that this group has made, how long will it take for them to implement the ones they choose to implement? Because the others, we know what they're going to do. They're going to go in the trash can. You won't see from this police department, you will not see a full implementation of the recommendations in total that this agency that was paid over $260,000, you won't see those recommendations implemented. I'll bet my hat on it. See, we're supposed to put up with a subpar police department. A police department that can get away with anything. A police department that is run amok by the FOP, who has more control and more power than basically the police chief and the city manager and the city council. It's evident. Now, they would deny that. All of them would deny that. But we've seen what's happened. You see, you don't get to where we are if you have organization and an organizational structure that is working properly. You don't get to where Wichita Police Department is at and where they've been for the last several years. You know, you look at how many changes we had. Okay, since Gordon Ramsay left Wichita, how many people have worn the title of chief, interim chief, whatever? That in itself says an awful lot, ladies and gentlemen. And there was a big article right after Ramsay left talking about low morale, talking about the DEI. A lot of officers don't want that. They don't want any part of that. Even though this agency in its report says that that was started by Gordon Ramsay and they should continue in that area. Well, you see that effort alone by Gordon Ramsay brought on a lot of contention from some of the good old boys at the police department. They didn't like change. They don't want to see change. They don't want to see diversity. They don't want to see inclusion. They don't want to see equity. And until you change the culture at the Wichita PD, change is not going to happen. Now, you can change the person at the top. You can change a deputy here or whatever, but that's not changing the culture. And what I see, and what I don't see, is a change in the culture between the Wichita Police Department and the city of Wichita. I don't see it. Now, do I hope I'm wrong? Absolutely, I do. But let me just tell you, another area that they don't talk about here, but we had another incident just this past Saturday night, where these police chases at high speeds through residential neighborhoods are causing bodily harm and serious injury and sometimes death to our citizens in their neighborhoods. And we had such an incident just on this past Saturday at 13th and Pike. Now, they say that the officers had just, and they use the term, just called off the chase when the accident happened. But yet they admit that this chase was occurring at high speeds through a residential neighborhood. Now, this cannot continue. This cannot go on. The city is going to end up with some expensive lawsuits behind these chases if they don't change the current chase policy. You see, it doesn't make any sense to chase anyone because of a traffic stop through these residential neighborhoods at high speeds. It doesn't make sense. If we know for a fact that the guy that we're in pursuit of is wanted for committing a serious crime, such as bank robbery or as a murder or a robbery, that's different. But to chase somebody because they made an illegal left turn or they ran a stop sign or they're driving without a tag light, that doesn't make any sense. All you have to do is you get close enough to him or her, get close enough to the vehicle to get the license tag number and then back off, especially if you see that this is going to escalate to anything over 40 miles per hour. But these young rookies and these inexperienced police officers are not going to call off a chase. You have to have a supervisor with some experience that has been through one of these accidents. He knows what it can lead to. That's who has to make the call to call off one of these chases. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see bodily harm to innocent people involved in police chases. So those are the two things that I wanted to talk about here on this show. And like I said, I've talked about them both before. And basically, the culture at the police department in Wichita has to change. And the other incident, the other topic that I was talking about, the firing of Coach Isaac Brown, all of you should have seen that coming. But like I said, go back and look at the video that I did in December on yoururbanconnection.com. Look under the banner sports. Okay. All right. That's good enough. I'm out.